starting with the new college football playoff format. I'm sure you guys have all heard it. They've been debating all offseason about what to do after just 1 year of the 12-team college football playoff. I think it was overall a success. However, there were a lot of issues with it still that people brought up, and that's going to happen. Going from 4 teams to 12 teams, they never really had a full kind of playoff like this. Because even with the 4 teams, it didn't super feel like a true playoff. But now that we got more teams involved, at least in my opinion, that's how I always felt about it. So anyway, last year, in case you weren't aware, which I'm sure you were aware if you're watching this channel, the seeding for the new 12-team college football playoff worked with the top 5 conference champions, all automatically getting spots, and then 7 at-large bids. That is not going to change. What is going to change is that the top 4 of those 5 conference champions were the only ones eligible for the top 4 seeds, which get a first-round bye, right? You avoid that first round, except for Clemson. They were the one who didn't make that top 4. So you had Oregon as number 1, champions of the Big Ten. Then you had Georgia in the SEC as a 2 seed. And then you jump to Boise State as a 3 seed in the Mountain West. And then the Big 12, Arizona State as the 4 seed. So you had a lot of teams that were heavily underseeded playing the first weekend that probably should not have. Or some teams, that had to play a tough road matchup when they really shouldn't have had to. They should have at least gotten home field in that first weekend. Teams like Tennessee, for sure. This season Tennessee had, they should have not have to play on the road their first game. Same thing can be argued with Indiana, which I'm going to use as a comparison. Because let's be honest, if Illinois is getting into the college football playoff this year with their schedule, it's going to be almost an exact mirror of how Indiana did it last season. So Illinois, I'm almost positive if they do make the college football playoff, they are going to be an at-large, right? So I don't think this necessarily hinders them from actually reaching the college football playoff. And I don't think it would affect their seeding too much. Okay, so the reasoning behind this decision, and also why I personally agree with the decision to change the seeding in the college football playoff, is that all 4 of those top seeds then lost to teams that played the first weekend. It was Oregon was number 1. I mean, they absolutely deserve to be there. They clearly were the number 1 team in the country. I'm not arguing that. Then you had Georgia as a 2 seed, obviously without Carson Beck with his injury. But I don't know if they should be penalized for that, right? But with the same logic of Jordan Travis and Florida State not that long ago, that doesn't really seem fair to me. But whatever. I'm personally okay with them being the 2. And then Boise State, though, all of a sudden, they were the one, especially that stuck out to me, champions of the Mountain West, because they were the number 3 seed. Despite in the national poll, they were actually 9th. So still absolutely deserve to be in the playoff. And I love that there's still 5 conference champions getting into the playoff. That is certainly tricky in this era of super conferences that we're building up now. We're already down to a power 4. The Pac-12 is going to try to come back, and they'll probably be competing with the Mountain West for for that last 5th bid, and whoever's going to grab that 12 seed basically is what it's going to become now with the new seeding rules. But I personally agree with that because Boise State, again, deserve to be in the playoff, and I love that these smaller conferences are getting their chances. I personally would much rather see a Mountain West champion sneak into the college football playoff than just another SEC team. That's just me. I'm sure a lot of SEC fans whose teams were right on the edge of the playoff will not agree with me on that. But I just think that's fair, and I think that keeps us away from further divulging into this era of super conferences that I really don't enjoy. There was a poll on the channel that was posted this week talking about what do you think is the biggest problem plaguing college football right now. There's obviously it's kind of a downtime college football, right? Besides this playoff, which is very exciting, but between the transfer portal and realignment things. A lot of people are unhappy. So that was a poll that went out. I voted for realignment. I think realignment is a huge problem. We have a power 4. We essentially have a power 2. And then, like, between the Big Ten and the SEC, especially the way the SEC has been talking at some of these meetings, right? Some guy asked the commissioner of the SEC. There was a report that they were talking about. They were like, "Why are we even part of the NCAA?" And then he responded, he's like, "Well, we can't just leave." But that's legitimately kind of the feeling, right? As the SEC and the Big Ten just kind of want to run everything. And they certainly deserve their share in the spotlight. But I just don't really like the idea of a power 2. And then I would say like a mid, I don't want to say mid-major, but like a mid 2 or like a little 2, kind of like the old Hollywood studio system, how there was like the big 5 and then the little 3. That's honestly kind of what the ACC and Big 12 are in football, not in basketball, but in football. That's kind of what they are to the Big 10 and SEC. So overall, I agree with this decision. I personally would also like to see those first round games not be home games. All 4 home teams won those first games as well, and I also feel like it didn't really feel cohesive with the rest of the playoff. Like, we'll take Indiana as an example again, but also Tennessee, SMU, and Clemson. Right, all 4 of those teams made the college football playoff and technically didn't play in a bowl game, even though teams way worse than them technically did. That just doesn't sit well with me. I think we can shell out 4 more bowl games for that first round of the college football playoff, or even 4 more if they ever, expand to 16, which they're already talking about doing. Which I am against at this moment in time. I want to see it in the long run. I'm not crazy about doing it right after we expanded to the 12-team college football playoff. I think we should let the 12-team playoff run its course at least a decade, like we gave the 14 playoff. Let people get used to it first before we start seeing 4 more teams into the playoff. We could talk about the college football playoff and conference realignment things. I could talk about this stuff all day. I think it's really interesting, and there's a lot of debate to it. I would love to see what you guys have to say in the comments about all of this, any of the topics we just touched on shortly. There's a lot going on, and this is not going to be the end. It might be for this year, the end of altering the college football playoff format, because we're almost hit the summer now. It's time to lock in a true format for December, January. But overall, I'm happy with the decision. Those smaller conference teams, those edge teams, those fringe teams, they'll still get in, but they'll be placed towards the end of the seeding, and rightfully so. So what does this look like for an Illinois team now that is trying to break into the playoff for the first time in program history? Honestly, like I said, they're a big comparison to Indiana, right? Illinois does not have a lot of tough opponents. Really, the only 2 ranked opponents they're going to play are Indiana and Ohio State. Certainly, they have good opponents. They're still in the Big Ten. They're playing Duke week 2 out of conference. But, they just it'll be a similar thing to Indiana and what they did last year, right? Just beat up on a not so tough schedule in a good conference, and that should get you in. That's what I see for Illinois. Again, I see them going 10-2. Indiana was a 10 seed last year with the 11-1 season they had. And so honestly, Illinois will probably fall in that same range if they go 11-1, 10-2, something like that. 3 losses is not going to get them in because of their schedule. That's why the most I see is 2, and with a win at Indiana is what gets them to. If they lose Indiana and Ohio State and they don't absolutely kick the crap out of every other team and go 10-2, I still not sure if they get in. But again, that Big Ten SEC bias that we're now seeing emerge a little bit more with this ruling. It's probably going to be all Big Ten SEC teams getting those buys now. So I don't think Illinois is going to get one of those buys. Nor do I think that they have the potential to be conference champion. I still don't think they're on the level of an Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State. I just don't, I personally just don't see it. This is still a really good, really experienced team that I think will sneak in. So they'll be back end. But again, if Illinois does what I predict them to do and the committee kind of views them as this season's Indiana, they're probably getting like an 8 seed, 9 seed instead of a 10 seed. If anything, this should improve Illinois' seeding. Because again, Big Ten SEC bias is going to get even stronger with this new seeding, which is okay as long as it doesn't take too much control, as I've been expressing my concerns. Their opponent likely then would be easier as well. This could hopefully have them avoid having to go on the road. Like if they could grab the 7 seed, the 8 seed, have a home game in Champaign, that would be absolutely electric. That would change this program entirely. Even if they lost, just to put Illinois on the map like that and get a home playoff game on campus is going to completely change the way people view this program. But again, this won't affect their actual chances of getting in, just the seeding. And I do think this is good for Illinois. It's nothing major, but if they do get into the playoff, this is going to play to their advantage, help them bump up a couple seeds, right? Because those lower conference teams are going to be seated lower. Like the Big 12 ACC team, none of them are going to be seated ahead of Illinois unless one of them is ridiculously good, right? I mean, it's certainly possible, but I think they're going to have to be really impressive to get seated ahead of an SEC team or Big Ten team. That's just kind of how it is right now. All right, so let me know your thoughts on that. There's so much more I could say about this topic, honestly, not even in relation to Illinois. I think it's incredibly interesting.